Thanks for tuning in to Written on the Edge, Season 8, Episode 19. In this week's episode, we will be discussing musician Daniel Land's upcoming album. That's right, solo album coming. Then we'll be reviewing Alex Borstein's Corsets and Clown Suits? Clown Suits and
Yeah,
Corsets, I forget the order.
I'll fly it here.
Thanks. But she went solo and she hit a bunch of current topics, so go Alex. So we'll break this episode up into chapters for you. You can jump to your favorite part, but now on to our guest. Become both a scholar and practitioner of the kind of music he creates, studying towards a PhD on artists like the Cocteau Twins and Slowdive at the London College of Music, whilst collaborating with artists as varied as Darkher, Swoone, and the electronica auteur Ulrich Schnauss. Daniel will release his new album Out of Season in 2023, that's right, this year, and he's currently writing a concept album about the AIDS crisis and is working on the second draft of a memoir about homophobia. Daniel, when do you sleep?
Yeah, right?
Rarely, but COVID helped. Not having to basically have any responsibilities for 2 years. That's certainly been useful for productivity, I think.
Nice. So where did the fire to create start? I mean, you're obviously artist in your blood. Where did that come from?
Yeah, I suppose it's like the old joke, really. You know, what came first, the music or the depression? It was...
Oh, yeah, that old one.
I mean, I don't know. It was just, you hear this from every artist, right? It was kind of there from day one, really, as long as I can remember. But it was always this sort of toss up in my mind between sort of music and literature, like music first, literature a close second. And it took me the longest time, I think, to find kind of my own blend of the two things. But I mean, just as a kid, like words flowed out of me. As soon as I could pick up an instrument, I could play anything I picked up, and music flowed out of me as well. And then I don't know. I mean, actually, a question for you guys: Are you both in the Bay Area? Are you from there originally, or are you from somewhere more rural?
I was in the Bay Area. Yeah, I'm now down in San Diego because my sister needed me to help her with my mom's health care. But yeah, I've been in the Bay Area for a good long while. So it was just recently I've relocated back down to San Diego. So I'm now at the southern end of the state.
And what about like
the Midwest?
Did you sort of grow up in quite urban areas, or?
Oh yeah, I did.
Yeah,
he didn't.
That was
I was a farm boy.
I think that's where a lot of it comes from. Like growing up queer in a very rural area, like an area of the southwest of England that had no gay representation at all.
You were the only gay in the village.
The only gay in the village. David should have been my
David
nickname. And it was just, you know, it does something to a character, I think. But a lot of the sort of fires of artistry, I think, were sort of stoked at that point. Maybe with early relationships and disastrous early relationships and things like that. So, yeah, it's always been there, though.
Nice. And your upcoming album, Out of Season, tells several stories. What do you want people to know about it?
Well, that's the thing. I'm sort of right at the beginning of the promotional cycle, and I probably don't have my short interview-ready answers all down pat at this point. But I guess it's about a lot of things.
So it began when...
yeah. I started this song on this day, and I was in that kind of mood. But I don't know. It's like, so what I've been trying to do for the last 2 or 3 albums really is to find a bit of a blend of the style of music I've always made, but with more of a queer sensibility. And particularly in this instance, I've been, for the last sort of 3 or 4 years, really been delving into some of the astonishing new queer poetry scene. I'm quite lucky that here in London we've got a sort of a dedicated gay bookshop called Gay's the Word. There's very few left in the UK bookshops at all, let alone gay bookshops.
Right.
But they're really dedicated staff there. They have a lot of sort of queer authors in and things like that. And sort of after becoming friendly with them, they were sort of pointing me in the direction of some of the amazing new queer poetry. And there was something about the frankness of the expression in a lot of this new work that made me think, why have I been doing what I've been doing all my career, which is basically hiding my vocals and putting loads of effects on things and making the music basically like an abstract painting. So there's kind of a desire, I think, really to be a bit more frank with lyrics and with speaking to sort of gay experience in a way. And at the same time that that was going on, I was sort of also becoming kind of fascinated with the idea of memory itself, really. I mean, the last, I mean, the COVID period has obviously been a bit of a mess for every country around the world. But before that, we were in quite a bad shape as a country, really, the UK, because we've had this whole thing with Brexit and leaving the European Union. And it's almost like the people who are, I don't know if I can explain this, but the people who've been setting the agenda in the UK for the last sort of decade or so are the people who are basically sick with nostalgia. They think it was all better in the 50s. So like for somebody that's quite interested in memory, the fact that the tone of our culture has been this very kind of nostalgic and somewhat kind of jingoistic mood has been quite interesting. And I suppose it's just a long way of saying really that I've been trying to explore memory itself as a subject matter, whether that's delving into gay history, my own history, or the history of the country in some ways. I mean, I hate political music, and I don't.
I was about to ask if you meant to
It's
go there with your music.
nah.
Well, it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of inherent with queer things. You kind of are political just by being,
Yeah.
so.
It's a different kind of political, isn't it? You
Mhm.
can suggest things, you can infer things without being like, I hate finger pointing music. This is the message, and I'm going to ram it down your throats. It's like it's much nicer if things have an array of connotations, or you can see the work with a few different interpretations, maybe. So I've been trying to sort of mix a bit of the political with a bit of the sort of queer side of things. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's like one of the things that's kind of fascinated me. This is, I know it bears very little relationship to the music or what I'm singing about, but people that I know who are in the sort of the neuroscience field have, have been we've been talking about it over the last sort of few years, and apparently some of the recent neuroscience on how memory works suggests that we never actually retrieve memories. What the brain actually does when it recalls a memory is it destroys it and it replaces it with an imperfect copy. So through time, the more your memories get accessed, the more unreliable they become. And this sort of explains a couple of things, really. I think firstly it explains how, like, if you've ever been on a trip with somebody and compare notes like 5 years later, it's like two entirely different holidays, right? You remember different things and there's like a totally different perspective. And it also kind of explains, I think, why it's become a convenient shorthand in films and TV. Whenever there's like a flashback or a memory sequence, it always goes to really grainy footage like Super 8 or black and white or something like that. So I think we kind of know this in our hearts, that memory itself is unreliable, like a photocopy of a photocopy. And I think like one of the things I was trying to do with the lyrics. Okay. So I suppose what this led on to for me was thinking about the fact that something similar has probably been happening to the UK as a whole, that, we've got a sort of falsified and imperfect recollection of who we are and who we used to be, and a desire to sort of return to that time. And I suppose, one of the things that I've been trying to do with this album, in a very, very subtle way, is just to reclaim a slightly different sense of England, like a more diverse England, a queerer England in some ways. Like I was reading and watching a lot of the films of Derek Jarman, like one of the queer outsider artists who's deeply passionate about England, but it was a very complicated kind of passion. And I suppose that was my mood going into the album, like, trying to just remember that we're better than this. And I suppose, like, you know, it's been happening all over the world, hasn't it? You guys have had Trump, which is kind of exactly the same phenomenon, I think, in many ways. And Make America Great Again, the same thing. Yeah.
If you base it on what you've been talking about, it's like I was thinking in my head, I'm like,
the modern
maybe
era,
all of those people with now then their alternate reality, maybe they've just run through all the copies of like legitimate facts.
Just made this infinitely worse, I think. It's the yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And the idea of enemy, if you don't agree with me, you're my enemy. Not just that we have a disagreement, you know, there's a foe-ism that's going on. You're my foe now, you know.
Yeah.
One of the other things that you had mentioned just in the materials you'd sent me, was the fact that you were looking at people in Britain and how it never seemed to recover from the Second World War.
It's because I'm not a royalist type of person. I'm not into the royal family, but the death of the Queen Elizabeth last year was kind of the end of an era for the UK in many ways. That, you know, a lot of people in the UK, their understanding or the memories of the Second World War is kind of bound up in the figure of Elizabeth, who was, you know, a minor participant in that war, fixing trucks or doing mechanic work or something like that. And she was there on VE Day out in the streets. And so there was a definite sense of like an ending, I think. And it's made the sort of finishing of this album especially, I suppose, poignant in some ways, really. But I mean, you know, Britain is an island nation. It's, you know, it's a small one, but it sees itself as an island. And a lot of our sense of ourselves is kind of bound up with defending ourselves against the Germans in the 40s. And it's funny, just as I was writing some of the lyrics for some of the songs, I was returning on a flight from Europe, and the way that you can in a plane, like seeing a whole coastline laid out in front of you, the kind of shapes that you remember from maps, it just struck me that, yeah, it is a frail little island, and it's sort of understandable that it sees itself in kind of like something of a defensive crouch, really. And I was reading a lot of stuff at the time, like the essays of Fintan O'Toole, for example, which talk about all of this stuff. Like, Britain never really got over the loss of its empire. It still thinks of itself as a major player on the global stage. And like, for example, when Biden was over here the other week, all of the British press is like frothing at the mouth of, it's all about the special relationship between the US and the UK. You ask the average citizen in the States if they've heard of the special relationship, they won't know what you're talking about. It's like we're just pretending that we're still, you know, a major player and that global power hasn't transferred elsewhere, you know? So yeah,
So I asked this next question.
I think Brexit also played. I'm sorry. I just think Brexit also played a factor in that, because
Absolutely.
that was a portion of the public trying to say we are still here, and not really understanding what that did to their economy, their political system, and all of that stuff, because they were so consumed with identity, you know, at that point.
And it's like a time in history when global power is probably transferring to the East. The idea that you would want to break into smaller groups and smaller trading blocks is insanity, really. But it just shows, doesn't it, that identity politics do trump, if you forgive the pun, they do trump economic self-interest.
So hopping back to Out of Season, do you have a song that still sticks with you, whether hauntingly or happily?
Oh, blimey. Yeah. There's 3 or 4 that we've been rehearsing the last couple of weeks that I think are up there as kind of all, in terms of what I do, they're kind of good examples of what I do, like well executed. There's a song called Idlewild, which will probably be the next single, probably my favorite, although it changes from week to week, is a song called Southern Soul, which is some of these themes, a little bit of these themes, but it's really a story about hooking up with a closeted straight guy 20 years ago. And it's just the right blend for me of the sort of what I'm trying to talk about in terms of national identity with the queer angle as well. And we're hopefully going to do a really good video for that song as well and try and push it out there. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
Very nice. And pre-orders are up?
They will be by the time this comes out. And if not, well, there'll be something on the website. In fact, that's live already. So, if people want to hear stuff from the album or stuff that I've released in the past, you can, of course, put my name into Spotify or Bandcamp or your streaming service of choice. But if you go to my website, which would be my preferred option, if you go to danielland.co.uk, not .com.co.uk, you can enter your email there, get a free download of a song from the album, and you'll be the first to know when the album is up for order. And I won't spam people, I promise. But mailing lists are good for artists, as I'm sure you guys know, much better than Facebook and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We try not to give Mr. Zuckerberg anything else.
Exactly, yeah.
There anything else you want folks to know about the album before I turn Baz loose on our get to know you questions?
Oh, I don't know. No, I don't think so, really. I think you've probably spoken in way too much detail already. So I'll leave it up to your listeners and viewers to check out the music if it sounds like something that they might be interested in.
Well, and just so folks know, the opening 10-second segment of this episode was Idlewild, so...
Oh, lovely. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for the promo.
You're welcome. In terms of what's up next for you, you're at the early part of the promo cycle for Out of Season,
yeah.
But you also teased us with another concept album and a memoir in your bio.
Yeah.
Do you want to share either of those yet, or is it still too early?
I mean, both are fairly early. The memoir is probably, well, that's second draft stage, so that's a bit more complete. It's been on the go for a while, but I said before that I grew up in a very rural part of the UK, and the memoir is kind of about that, really, and how it impacts somebody who's at coming out age, 16, 17, 18 years old. And it's about the various ways that homophobia can play itself out in somebody's life. It's funny, actually. This is another topical thing, but like with all of the stuff that's going on with like Ron DeSantis and the Don't Say Gay bills in the United States, we had something like that in the UK in the 80s and 90s, and it's resulted in schools and colleges being completely unable to teach or mention even anything to do with queerness or gay people. And so there was a total silence. Grew up in like a vacuum where there was nothing on TV, there was nothing sort of talked about. And it contributes to your early relationships. People don't have a support structure when they come out. So the memoir is about that, really, and also about some of the campaigning work that myself and some friends back where I'm from did to change that legislation and the ultimate success of getting that legislation repealed. So I'm really excited about that. I read a lot of memoirs, a lot of gay fiction and things like that, but I've never quite read a book like that. So I hope I can actually pull it off and do justice to it. Meanwhile, yeah, as you say, AIDS has been a big interest of mine since about 20 years ago when I did an undergraduate degree in English and American literature. I probably at this point read somewhere in the region of 100 books, whether fiction or non-fiction, which are various sort of accounts of the AIDS crisis. It's flowed into a couple of my songs at this point, but not really in an explicit way. The next album is going to be about that. a concept album on the AIDS crisis, probably with some spoken word elements, but also with some, decent number of songs scattered throughout it. Whether or not it will fly up the charts, I should probably imagine that it's not going to be a chart topper given the subject matter, but it feels the real and honest thing to do next, and the kind of logical extension of what I'm working on at the minute. So that's kind of what I'm obsessing about at the minute.
Wow. And your website's the best place for people to keep up with updates on all the projects?
Absolutely, yeah. www.danielland.co.uk, and you'll find everything there.
Is there a social media platform where you prefer to be most active?
Probably, for everything I've said about Zuckerberg before, probably Facebook, just because I seem to have the vast majority of people who follow me on there. But either Facebook or Twitter or Instagram /Daniel Land Music, you'll find me on all of those platforms as well.
Or go to his website, sign up for his mailing list.
Join the mailing list.
Springboard off of the website, because all of the links are there too.
Exactly. Thank you very much.
All right. Any final words of wisdom?
No, I just wanted to say thank you for this opportunity, and thanks for everything that you're doing to support queer artists of all sorts. It's a wonderful thing you're doing, and I've been listening to so many of the episodes. I've really enjoyed them, and I'd love to, if the memoir or the AIDS album comes out, I'd love to come back and talk about those more, possibly.
Please do. As soon as you're ready to start talking about a promotion date, sign up, because we book out early, but we would love to have you come back and tell us about new projects.
That would be amazing. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you, Daniel Land, for joining us today. It's been an amazing chat with you. Thank you for sharing some of the music with us. I know we got to sneak listen to a couple early songs.
Yeah.
We at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to new media by queer content creators, so if you enjoy learning about new artists like Daniel Land, please like and subscribe so you get alerts for new episodes. If you'd like to hear the full interview, check out our Patreon. But now, on to our review.
What hit show? We're sitting here staring at each other. Hi, we're here for reviews now. And pardon me whilst I lubricate my lips. Because God, they are chapped. All right, kids.
I'm so sorry.
We are back. We are back for Wrote Reviews, and this time around we have something rather interesting. This was suggested by my illustrious co-host and ever brilliant narrator and voiceover actor and author. We are doing Alex Borstein's new special on Amazon Prime called Corsets and Clownsuits. It is, I loved, first off, out the gate, I just want to say I loved that it was filmed in the theater that is in Mrs. Maisel. I just thought that was a fucking brilliant touch. And then she folded in the burlesque dancer as well. So it just added to the whole thing. Bravo, Miss Borstein. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. What my wonderful co-host failed to tell me, and I think he did it with a cheeky grin, was that her entire show was based upon things that I jump up and down about and that are the focus of my writings, and that is the world of perceptions.
Yep.
And so the girl was speaking my lingo.
I didn't want to color your perception going into it.
There you go.
I loved it. She is an icon in the community. She will play a lesbian role to the hilt. She tackles a lot of current issues. I mean, everything from her daughter experimenting with the non-binary identity to women's issues.
To get more pizza.
Yeah. That was funny.
I love that child's logical thinking there. Work the system.
And, every single thing she touched on with humor. But She
Wit.
covered some serious stuff. Yeah, and
Hmm.
it's intelligent humor. It's not like lowbrow. I mean, the thing is, she will use a lowbrow trope to get her point across, but it's still an esoteric intellectual conversation.
Yeah,
I
I
loved it.
think what
It was so artfully done.
what I loved about it was its subversive nature.
Yes.
She played with your perception while talking about perceptions, and at the same time used humor to educate you, which is when comedy does its best work. I think of John Leguizamo's Latin History for Morons. This is when comedy informs, when it can break down barriers that people put up and refuse to listen to one another. Comedy has a way of tearing that down. And I think what she did so well was, one, she became vulnerable from the very beginning.
Mm.
She admitted that her life was in the shit can in the height when she was probably doing some of her best work, and she needed to be put back together. Um, Emphasize air quotes for those who aren't watching us on YouTube, and why aren't you? But I digress. But what I loved about it was that, you know, uh, people don't give perceptions their due. They really don't. And they don't understand that humor is born out of skewering perceptions. That's what the entire industry is built on. We people don't realize that perceptions are 9/10 of everything that we do. And all of your gig throughout your entire life is trying to mitigate and control perceptions of you, even your own perception of yourself. And excuse me, sidebar. Um, there was just something weird. I don't know. I shaved. I think something fell in my mouth. Anyways, back to the review. Um, I think the thing that I loved the most was that she immediately hit you with perceptions right from the get-go, and she gave you solid examples of why perceptions are so important in our lives and why we use them to shortcut and make decisions about things and give things priority, which may or may not be the truth. And that's what I loved. And then she used her own personal journey of going through divorce and exploring that, and suddenly being a woman in her 40s who's having to like become intimate again with strangers, if that's a thing she wants to do. And I liked that, and I like the fact that she even referenced Linda Hamilton on this bizarre take of Alexander Hamilton. And she even talked about celibacy being an option. And I'm sure for a woman her age, back in the dating scene, when dating has changed so drastically from 20 years ago when she was doing it initially, I, I'm sure it's daunting and scary. I wouldn't do it. I'd say that's it, game over. I'm just going to ride my rest of my years out. I'm not getting involved again. I can understand why my mom did it. She said, "No, I've already had one husband. He's gone, so that's it for me." And I get it. There's no way you would want to jump into that fray again. So I give her courage. Great for her courage that she's sort of gotten back in the game and that she's found cohorts that have given her the strength to do it. I love the two guys who are with her. They were
I know.
phenomenal. They work really well as a trio. And I couldn't help but think of Diane. I can't think of her last name now. Our Mrs. Maisel. Diane Jenkins? No, Diane. Oh, I can't. Forrest. Diane Forrest, right?
Diane Forrest, yes.
Our Mrs. Maisel. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Diane Forrest. And go see that episode. She is phenomenal. She's got one hell of a story, and to us, she is the real Mrs. Maisel. But what I loved about it was that you saw Alex kind of mirror some of that stuff. She had the Jewish cultural perspective, she had the European perspective, she had the American perspective, and all of these different perceptions played upon how she was navigating through the hardest time of her life. And with kids, and that's the thing I love most about it, is that she laid the groundwork for all the stupidity, the rampant stupidity that we obsess ourselves with as a society. Talking about trans women, are they women? Are they not women? And as she says, who fucking cares? It's their journey. That's their truth. And then she said, nobody wants to choose to be a woman, because why would you choose 70% on the dollar for earnings? Why would you choose people legislating against your own health care? Why would you choose, And so it just completely eradicates that whole, and like she said, it's not like there's a pie of women, and if these trans women come over, they're stealing from the pie. There's no pie. It's limitless, and I love that she broke down the perceptions into
Mm-hmm.
digestible pieces that anybody can understand. And she did the same with abortion. She did the same with, being claiming your own sexuality. She just was all over it, and I love the interplay with the audience. I don't know how much of that was ad-libbed or how much of it was staged, but I thought it worked really well either way. I love the fact that she included the ASL interpreter.
Interpreter.
What a weird word.
Interpretator.
Yeah. She's an interpretator. I heard somebody else do that. Oh, what was it? Imitation. Somebody said on a video I watched, and I'm like, that's not even a word. I just did it too. Anyways, but I love that she included the ASL interpreter and had her do really vulgar things and show everybody, so we all know how to do hot, wet pussy. And dick swing. I know, it's brilliant. It was so queer from that perspective. It just broke down all of that stuff, and she just rode that train right into town and didn't give a flying fuck whether you were along for the ride or not, and that's another thing I liked about it, was that, yeah, she allowed her womanhood to stand tall, and she stood on her Jewish ancestry. She stood on her European roots, her American life, and just talked a blue streak about things that we struggle with as a society, and then just kind of cleared the smoke and said, what are we doing? What are we doing here? I thought it was brilliant. I love it. If you like Hannah Gadsby, this is on that level. If you like Stephen Fry, this is on that level. It is that kind of humor. Another one that it reminded me of so much was Sarah Bernhardt's Without You, I'm Nothing, which is down the same road. She did music as well as talked about tough subjects. And as only Sandra Bernhardt can do. And so I think it's in that vein. Whoopi Goldberg's original Broadway show, it's along that line again.
Yep.
Comedy that makes you think, but not in a painful, oh, I'm getting a headache kind of way. You know what I mean? While you're laughing, you're going, oh, yeah, light bulbs are going off. Okay, I get it, So that's my thoughts on it. Do you have anything you want to add with it?
No, you pretty much said a lot of what I was thinking, so we're good there.
Excellent. So yeah, if you haven't seen Mrs. Maisel, definitely watch Mrs. Maisel, because I think in a weird way it gives you. I don't know that if you have never seen Alex Borstein in either Gilmore Girls or Mrs. Maisel, I don't know. I mean, I think you would have still got the humor, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's an element for those of us who have watched her playing Susie Meyerson and knowing that she based it off of her tough grandmother, Jewish grandmother who survived the Holocaust. I think there's an added level of appreciation of the humor because you know where that journey came from and you've seen it in action, So I highly recommend, we both have said it. We've talked about it. We're both going to give a review to the 5th and final season of Mrs. Maisel later on when it concludes. But I think that if you watch Mrs. Maisel, one, you'll see the theater that they're in and you'll see it in its many forms. And so that's a big plus. But I think with that said, let's get to our ratings. Why don't you go first since I've done all the blabbing?
Mine's easy. 5s across the board. I mean, and I'm saying that about a stand-up special because she even put some serious thought into the production value.
Yeah.
The use of the theater, the costuming. I mean, all of it. She made it a show. It wasn't just her on stage with a microphone. So yeah,
right.
Important topics, Very
The
well
aesthetics
presented.
were just,
The aesthetics were
yeah.
astounding. I gave it fives across the board. It was easy numbers.
Yeah, and all of it applies. There's music. There's there is a score to it. There is,
Mhm.
the lighting has dramatic effects. There's winter time. There's a fucking Christmas tree, for God's sakes, on a Jewish comedian show. So you're gonna go there. Um, yeah, mine are fives across the board, but it's not like we're cheating in any one of the categories because every single one of those categories is there. You know,
Mhm.
that's the thing that I loved about it, was even down to the luggage on the stage that had
Yes.
Barcelona, travel tags on them, and
Yep.
that's an important point in the story too. But yeah, I totally loved it. I thought it was brilliant. Um, I've always thought she was amazing. I've never ever seen her in something that I just, didn't adore her in. But yeah, so definitely go see it. It is on Amazon Prime, so if you have Prime, definitely is part of the package. Check it out. You will not be sorry. So,
Mhm.
what are we on about? What are you on about?
Um, for whatever reason this year, I have 3 weddings to go to in May, plus Mother's Day, plus friends
God,
visiting from the United Kingdom, plus friends visiting from New York. So May's busy.
I would say
I
so.
had forgotten. I had forgotten all of the crap that goes into buying a new suit. Like,
So you and Susie,
yeah,
because at the end of the
basically.
last episode, she was getting fitted for a suit.
She was, and I was right there with her. Uh, I don't know that I'm on about much else, actually.
Well, with 3 weddings, that's enough. All you're missing is a fourth and a funeral, and God forbid that you have the last one.
Well,
As the Jews say.
yeah, I don't want that. But the only weekend that does not have a wedding in my May is Mother's Day.
So still booked.
Yeah,
I get it. I get it.
it's
Okay.
kind of been my focus for the week.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. Yeah, I mean, you've got stuff and things to do and be and people to see, and so yeah. All right. So what am I on about this week? Well, first off, I saw 2 things that I'm so excited about. First one is the latest Flash trailer has come out, and it looks epic. I even saw a Japanese version of the trailer, which is slightly different than the American version. And other than the fact that you have some Japanese guy screaming at you in Japanese, and I have no idea what he's saying, it's very Japanese in its presentation. But it had scenes that were not in the American release of the latest trailer. So I'm so looking forward to it. I think it's interesting that they're being very, very cautious about whether or not Ezra will continue as the Flash. They've not said no, they've not said yes. They're saying we'll just have to see how
Mhm.
it goes. But every
Right.
indication that I've seen from everybody who has seen, and there have been a couple of screenings of the film already, everybody has said it is phenomenally good. So, I don't know. Money talks, bullshit walks. That's all I'm going to say. So I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to see it. I'm a fan of Ezra Miller. I hope he is getting the help that he needs. Things have definitely quieted down on his side of the planet. So maybe he is. So all the best to him on that journey. So I'm excited about that. The other thing, I'm absolutely over the moon. I literally shrieked like a Japanese fangirl watching their favorite music artist come in the airport when I saw that HBO is producing a Donna Summer documentary, and it's with all her home movies in her voice. Her husband has produced it. And I am just giddy as a schoolgirl over it. Miss Summer, I had the pleasure of meeting her. I actually went to one of her art exhibits. Lovely lady, lovely, lovely person. Um, she was an icon for the queer community. She went through some serious shit when she started doing gospel music, and everybody attributed something to her that she didn't mean to say in the way she said it, and it just became a big mess. And the gay community turned on her. But later years, all of it tended to wash out, and we finally got the full story of how that all happened and how it was taken out of context and what her original intent was. And but everything I saw, she was a very, very lovely, very private person in many respects. What you saw on stage was a performance. That was not who she was as a person. So I think this is going to be very interesting because it's a lot of home movies, a lot of home video. It's narrated in her own voice. So I think it's rather interesting to have something like that, but it's called Love to Love You Baby, the Donna Summer story. So that's coming out on May 16th on HBO Max or Max. So I will definitely be front and center with popcorn in hand and my favorite beverage and my blanket, and I will be ready to be totally down for every single second of that documentary. So that's what I'm on about there. But on a positive note, I have 2 winners for Who Won the Week. So I'm going to go ahead and go since I've got the mic, and then I will let you end up with who won the week for you. The first one, Who Won the Week, if you've not watched it on YouTube, or if you've missed it when it was actually happening, the White House Correspondents' Dinner happened recently, and the clips of it are up on the YouTube, and it is hysterical. Some of the best jabs and pokes, and Biden got up and did his spiel, and he was just as good, if not better, than Obama was when he did it. He got some major zingers in, and, God love him. Uncle Joe's up there knocking him out with the best of them. Roy Wood Jr. did a great emceeing of the whole thing, a hosting of it. He had some great, and he hit both sides. He hit the liberals and he hit the conservatives. So, he played fair game. And it was all in good fun. And it was nice to see something that resembled normalcy, where both sides of the aisle could poke fun at each other and, be there for a good cause for upcoming journalists and their scholarships to enter into the field. So that's what the White House Correspondents' Dinner is all about. And one of the best lines that I think was said was, Fox News had to show up because they were really in need of a free dinner.
Nice.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Yeah, no free pizza in that office for a while.
Nope.
Anyways, that's partially who won my week, but the last one who won my week is actually Alex Borstein. I'm so thrilled that she is stepping into the light. She's been a great character actress. She's had I don't want to say a side career, because she's definitely noticed. She's gotten the awards for it, so she is recognized. But I'm liking that she's stepping in front and creating her own sphere. And that's what I love about it. So I've always been a fan, huge fan of hers. She is the snarkiest harp player I have ever seen portrayed. If you've not watched Gilmore Girls for any reason, watch it to see Alex Borstein play the harpist inside the Dragonfly Inn. Killer. She would play a song and it would come right up to her break, and she'd be in the middle of the song playing on the harp, and she would just stop and get up and leave. It was brilliant. Anyways, she was the grouchiest harp player I'd ever seen, but I loved it. I loved every minute of it. All right, nice. Who won your week?
Interestingly, the Reed Report on MSNBC. The way the hostess, Ms. Reed, presents the atrocities committed by the ultra-conservatives in such a upbeat and charming way just lends credence to the fact that they're crazy and there's no other way to report it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do appreciate her delivery 100%.
And she's also where I got inspired for us to do Who Won the Week, because she has it.
Nice. I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's what you got?
That's what I got.
All right. Well, there's one other thing I want to add. Just recently it broke that John Roberts is now involved in a scandal. Seems his wife made $10 million from commissions from a law firm that had business before the court. Gee, don't they learn? Come on, John. What are you doing? What are you doing? Now we know why you didn't want to testify. Got it. So there we are, kids.
Yep. Yep.
Sorry, I just had to throw that in there because it just shocked me yesterday
finally...
when it happened. I'm like, oh, fucking God, here we are. Are they all that way? Sonia Sotomayor, you better not be doing shit, bitch. I'm gonna come for you if you are. So your hands better be clean. No Latinas get involved, okay? Anyways, all right. That's my final words of wisdom, such as they were.
All right, then. Written on the Edges, produced by Rogue Ravens Media. For our disclaimers, links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.rotepodcast.com. If you enjoy learning about new artists, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes. Our new levels on Patreon should be rolling out today, is when I clicked the button on them. So check your levels if you are a supporter. If you aren't, we added a $2 level. You can totally help us help queer artists reach new audiences for $2 a month.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. We love you. Tune in next week for your queer media fix.
Bye-bye.
Oh, what's that? Closing time. The bums rush in melody, dear.